we'll see how long this goes. Hopefully this won't go longer than an hour. I just this got pointed out to me, and I just figured I have to cover it because this is like one of the most insane. Well, I don't know if one of the most insane, but I almost respect the chutzpah. I almost respect them for just saying, look, we're going to have regime change in Hungary, just openly threatening Orban. I mean, this has been going on for a while. The EU threatened to destroy Hungary's economy and to make the average person there suffer unless they did whatever it was that they told them to do. I mean, we covered this a while back. So this is it. Now, I just want to, we'll skip ahead if you don't want to watch this whole thing, to the Cliff Note version. I think this is fucking amazing, this part here. Prime Minister, let's see here. Prime Minister Orban, who on one hand basically claims the U.S. government is trying to overthrow his government, publicly calls for the political defeat of the President of the United States of America states and actively participates in U.S. partisan events. Hungary advocates for electoral candidates around the world from Poland to Brazil, all the while decrying foreign interference at home. Who leads the United States government or any government is a question for the people of that country alone to decide. Yeah, that's oh, come on, guys. Just say that you, like, it's not for them. While Hungary attempts to wait out those who it disagrees with, whether in the United States or the European Union, the rest of the world is moving forward. While the Orban government may want to wait out the United States government, the United States will certainly not wait out the Orban regime. So, Orban administration. So let's just take a look at this. We'll go through the rest of this, but basically claims the U.S. is trying to overthrow him. And then 2 paragraphs away, the Orban government want to wait out the United States government, but we will not wait out them. While Hungary waits, we will act. We will carry out a colored revolution in Hungary. We will. The U.S. doesn't interfere with elections and other like this is just it doesn't happen. It never has happened. It never will happen. It doesn't matter if like Hungary's elections were free and fair. It doesn't matter if it's what the Hungarian people want. All that matters is that I don't know they support G-slur stuff. So let's watch this. I'll see how much of it I can take. Also, just how tacky is it to do this in Budapest? Like, this isn't even somewhere. This is the ambassador to Hungary openly calling for the overthrow of a government in the capital of that government. Like, how else? Maybe I'm exaggerating. How else am I supposed to take? While Hungary waits, we will act. We will not wait out the Orban. So the context here is Orban's waiting for the U.S. government to change. So they're saying that we will not wait for the Hungarian government to change. We will make the change. I don't know. Maybe this is like, maybe I'm just projecting here, but let's see. Of course, we got the Democracy Institute. I'm sure that the National Endowment for Democracy is involved. We should do I should do a stream where we just go to the National Endowment for Democracy's homepage and just read through it. Because there's a lot of shit there. Hungary's terms, I think, are 4 years, like most parliamentary countries.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Excellencies, representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives of American businesses here in Hungary.
For those of you who don't live in parliamentary systems, so generally speaking, how it works in parliamentary systems is there is a president, or in the case of Canada, a governor general, who's purely ceremonial and just goes to events and signs treaties and stuff like that. You also, in a parliamentary government, the real power is held by the prime minister or chancellor or premier or whatever title they want to use. Generally speaking, so long as the prime minister or premier, whoever maintains the confidence of the House, they are able to govern. If they lose what's known as a confidence vote, then they have to dissolve and go to election. So a confidence vote would be the yearly budget. I think financial stuff is the main thing. So like if sometimes there'll just be a direct vote of non-confidence put forward for it. Once again, I'm sure I like to call Russian elections overdetermined, wherein I think Putin would win, but like it's done so he wins by like 80% instead of by 65%.
Second largest foreign job creator, colleagues, distinguished guests. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to take stock of 25 years of Hungary's membership in the most successful alliance, military alliance, in the history of the world. In particular, I'd like to thank Minister Geza Jasinski for his poignant remarks. I always listen closely to what Minister Jasinski has to say, and I always learn something by doing so. Thank you. I'd also like to thank our panelists, Peter Kreko, Dora Jorfi, Zsuzsanna Pravak Institute, for hosting us here today. These halls were filled with the best and brightest students studying at the preeminent university in all of Central Europe. This is still happening, but it is happening 250 kilometers west of here in Vienna. Central European University once belonged in Hungary, which prided itself as being at the heart of Central Europe. But the fact that Central European University...
I like how comments are off and chat is disabled, because of course it is. Look at the... I'm gonna... You know what? I'll load this. I want to see how ratioed this got. Because they removed thumbs down. So, and I have something that lets me see that. Okay, it's not... There's not as many thumbs downs as I thought there was.
Moved further to the west, as Hungary opened eastward, feels significant. Where there were once Hungarian students cramming for exams down the hall, there is now a nice brunch spot. So while I won't spend much time on the saga of what the Hungarian government put this university through over the objections, I might add, of the previous US administration.
Okay, let's once again, he said that, okay. Where is it, they say? Okay, it is a question for the people of that country to make to decide. So keep in mind they say that. It is, and this is just him shitting on them.
I think it is fitting to mention because it epitomizes the sacrifice of something great in exchange for, honestly, it's hard for me to understand, in exchange for talking points, political points.
Sovereignty.
Whatever was gained, it's clear that Hungary lost when it lost these students. It's fitting to mention CEU's history because it is not a unique story in Hungary. Just over 100 kilometers from here, members of the United States Armed Forces are living and working alongside their Hungarian counterparts at Papa Air Base. These brave young men and women, along with other American service members currently deployed at Camp Croft, have traveled thousands of miles from their hometowns to defend America.
Okay, I want to take I know this is unprofessional, but I'm not professional. I want to take a poll in the chat. Press 1 if this guy is a massive whiny bitch. Press 2 if he's making reasonable points.
America and its interests wherever that may take them. They come to the very frontier of the transatlantic alliance, from American cities and towns most Hungarians have never heard of. Places like Moline, Illinois,
Who cares?
Neenah, Arkansas, Milburn, Oklahoma, Shelbyville, Indiana. Each and every one of them has taken an oath.
Okay, once again, just to ask the chat, like, am I crazy for thinking that this is completely inappropriate for the ambassador to Hungary to go and just smear the country like this on like an important anniversary, like the anniversary of their alliance, to just go and just shit all over them? I don't know. I just think this is very unprofessional.
To defend their country. But they have done something greater. They not only have an obligation, if necessary, to risk their lives for their country, for the United States, but if called upon to do so, for our NATO allies. These courageous men and women are prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for the allies of the United States of America, for Hungary, for Hungarians. This commitment should not be taken lightly.
What a bitch.
It represents a living commitment to protect Hungarians by America's sons and daughters. Hungary is in the club of democracies sworn to protect one another, a full-fledged member of the most successful military alliance the world has ever known. Hungary is
More successful than the coalitions, more successful than the Allies in World War II, more successful than the Entente in World War I. I also just want to say, once again, European ambassadors, Russia not going. So once again, because we've talked about this in the past. Let me just make sure this is, yeah. So Lavrov called in all of the EU ambassadors. He called them in and he said, look, I want you guys to come here and we're going to explain to you that you aren't going to, we don't want you interfering in our election. Seems very reasonable. The ambassadors refused to go. They refused the summons of the foreign minister of the country they were in, and they told him to fuck off. Like, there's countries I don't like. Like, I hate Venezuela. If the U.S. ambassador was summoned by the foreign minister of Venezuela and he told him to fuck off, then he should be expelled. Like, it's just, it's so just antithetical to it. I don't even no.
is far from alone. And how are these young American service members from Moline and Shelbyville and Milburn and Neenah welcomed here in Hungary? On the one hand, they have been welcomed warmly by their counterparts in the Hungarian military, as well as by the Hungarian people more broadly, who understand that deployments like this are a reflection.
So we're asking the people in the Hungarian military and the Hungarian civil society that is funded by the National Endowment of Democracy to rise up.
Of the strong ties between the Hungarian and American peoples. On the other, for more than 3 years, in violation of our defense cooperation agreement, the Hungarian government has not allowed these young soldiers to get license plates for their family cars. Instead, forcing them to pay tens of thousands of forints out of their pocket every month for temporary registrations.
Oh.
Not because of
Muffin.
or red tape.
Oh,
Because
Muffin.
the Hungarian government has made a political decision to do so.
Oh, Muffin. Oh. How much is a forint even? Okay, Hungarian. Forint to dollar. We shouldn't have to pay for anything. 1,000 forints is like $3. Literally $3 is 1,000 forints. They have to pay $3 a month.
Yes, you heard me right. I'm talking about license plates.
Because I guess the Hungarian people don't have to pay for license plates?
Of course, this speech isn't about license plates, but this issue is indicative.
How, like, no, but I'm serious. This guy's a bitch. Like, this is so passive-aggressive and effeminate and womanly.
Of the current concerning state of Hungary's relationship.
Oh, it's concerning. It's problematic.
With its allies. It has not always been this way. And it does not need to remain so. So as we reflect on 25 years of our alliance, let's look at where we have been. America's friendship with Hungary goes back centuries.
No, it
In
doesn't.
2021, our nation celebrated 100 years of diplomatic relations, but our relationship stretches back much further. When brave Americans fought for their independence from the British Empire, it was Hungarian nobleman Mihai Kovács who helped lead and ultimately died alongside the U.S. cavalry in the American Revolution. During the American Civil War, President Lincoln's affirmation in the Gettysburg Address.
Let me look it up. Is this guy gay? I'm going to have to look this up. Is this guy gay or is he just an F-slur? Because this is such an effeminate way of talking. Like, I know my voice is not the most... Yes, he is. Okay, he is actually. There we go. There we go. And he's a Jew. Okay, so he's a gay Jew. Okay. How was I able to tell that immediately? From this. Of course they said that's who they said.
By the people, for the people, shall not perish from earth, took inspiration in that dark hour from the great Hungarian reformer and democratic revolutionary leader Lajos Kossuth, who said, quote, all for the people and all by the people. America today is home to immigrants from all over the world, including a vibrant and proud Hungarian diaspora that sought refuge from totalitarianism in the 1930s, found safe haven after
I like how, like, I could just tell. It's literally every time.
1956 revolution, and became an integral part of the American family.
The American Empire.
They include visionary thinkers and like scientist Edward Teller and Leo Szilard, mathematician John Van Neumann, cinematic giants Michael Curtiz and Adolf Zukor, technology pioneer Andrew Grove, who escaped to the United States after Moscow crushed Hungary's 1956 revolution and became one of the key architects of the computer industry.
Okay, I'm going to just ask that, what has Orban ever actually done to act against America? Like what has he ever done to prove that he's a disloyal, like that he's a bad ally, that he doesn't support America, that he doesn't support NATO, that he doesn't support the EU? Like what has he actually done? He said, like, that sanctioning Russia was a mistake, which it was, and Germany's in depression, is in economic depression. France is in economic depression. UK was in a depression. He thinks giving money to the most corrupt country on earth for a failing war is a bad idea, and that they should like, I don't know.
They also include great American innovators like our newest Nobel laureate, Katalin Karikó, who left communist Hungary for the freedom of the United States in 1985 so that she could continue her research into mRNA vaccines, pushing forward advancements that decades later would save countless lives in the fight against COVID-19. What unites these connections between our two nations
is they're all Jewish?
Is the shared longing of our peoples for liberty and democracy, and a determination for freedom that is unrelenting and defining.
So like, I just want to ask a narrative question here. This is a narrative question. So the narrative is that Trump tried to overthrow American democracy, right? that January 6th was 9/11 times 1,000, and that Trump is a populist who's trying to win election, and if he takes power, then America's going to become a fascist regime. Like, that's the narrative, right? So, by their own admission, America is like fucked. Like, by their logic, like normal countries don't have like military. Well, by their logic, military coups and stuff like that. So they're like, look, well, our country had like a coup attempt. We had mass election irregularities. We had we're trying to use lawfare to disqualify, no, or not even that. By their own admission, by their narrative, Trump is a fascist who tried to seize power, and the legal system completely failed to stop him, and he hasn't been tried for treason, and he's attempting to seize power again. And
long road to freedom reached a milestone nearly 25 years ago when it was welcomed into the Transatlantic Alliance. At the time, many, including myself, regarded former Warsaw Pact countries joining the Washington Treaty as righting a historic wrong. Hungary had found itself on the wrong side of its historical destiny, excluded from Europe, left out of the community of democracies. Viktor Orban, who was the prime minister when Hungary joined NATO in 1999, understood this. When he delivered a speech at the first raising of the Hungarian flag as a NATO member in Brussels, he said, and I quote, "I cannot help feeling that history is rewarding the efforts of Hungarians in 1956 in accepting Hungary as an ally into NATO, into what he called, and I quote, the alliance of the West." Prime Minister Orban...
Okay, but has Orban ever, once again, has he ever done anything to indicate he doesn't want to be in NATO? Has he ever, like, said he doesn't want good relations with America? I like how not even like, just any attempt at pragmatism to these guys means you're like Hitler.
lamented the long years Hungary's boat had tarried in open waters, vulnerable. Hungary may have become free in 1991, but it continued to be buffeted by threatening forces. But by joining NATO, Prime Minister Orban affirmed, quote,
"Threatening forces like you.
We now finally have anchored our country to the western coast." Orban also emphasized the importance of establishing democracy and the rule of law alongside neighbors that had likewise emerged from 40 years of communist dictatorship. A solid quote, a quote from Prime Minister Orban, quote, "A solid pillar of our joining the alliance is that we," referring to Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic, "succeeded in building such countries," he stated, that is, democratic countries. And he was right.
Dude, your country, by your own, like, logic, had a coup attempt. Literally had a coup attempt.
Hungary was not...
When was the last time Hungary had a coup attempt? I can't think of one.
...admitted to NATO because of its tragic history, but because of its commitment to a democratic future and its ability to contribute to the security of a transatlantic community of democracies, a community from which Hungary now finds itself increasingly isolated.
Whoa. Okay. Once again, I like how Orban's like, maybe we should just, like, not start World War III. Like, that's literally, like, I don't get why they say he's a Russia shell. It's literally just, maybe we shouldn't start World War III. Like, because keep in mind, they are still saying in every Western capital, we can't negotiate with Russia. That's not even on the table.
So where does this relationship stand today? This brings me back to the license plate issue with which I began running.
Who cares?
This license plate issue has remained unresolved for over 3 years. Ministers of this government have assured us that it would be solved, only later to concede that solving it was beyond their power on hold at the top. Hungary's boat may be firmly anchored.
Now, as someone who's dealt with shit like this in the past, um, this very well could not be political at all, and it could just be a bureaucracy issue. Because I know I've had issues where there's like loopholes and stuff happened, and I've written to, like, I wrote to Justo, I wrote to the federal education minister, I wrote to my member of parliament, my member of provincial parliament. I wrote all these people, and they all said, "Look, we have no power to deal with any of this. This is an issue that has to be done with on a local level." So they went to the local level, and then they said it has to be done on the federal level, and no one could help me with anything. So that is, yeah.
Anchored, but American service members can't register their cars.
Well, dude, servicemen live on the street in America. Like, what is this about? Like, don't veterans have like a really high suicide rate and they're treated like shit?
In the grand scheme of things, the issue with the license plates should be a triviality. A bit of red tape easily solved.
No, like,
for some reason it isn't. It isn't because the Hungarian...
Okay, I'm just going to ask people once again in the chat. Have you ever encountered something like that where there's just like some bureaucratic nonsense that can't be resolved, even if you talk to people in power? Like, I've come across that in the public and private sector. Lots of companies act that way. Lots of professional organizations act that way.
Hungarian government doesn't want it to be. But as I said earlier, this speech is not about license plates. It is about an ally that behaves unlike any other. It is about a government that labels and treats the United States as a, quote, adversary, while making policy choices that increasingly isolate it from friends and allies. This speech is about a longtime friend and ally saying and doing things that undermine trust and friendship.
How much of this is like, it would be a shame if someone knocked over your star? Like, how much of this is like mafia tactics?
We cannot ignore it when the Speaker of Hungary's National Assembly asserts that Putin's war in Ukraine is actually, quote, led by the United States. We cannot ignore a sitting minister.
I mean, but it is. Like, Victorian, like, you literally did. And here's the thing, is they're very two-sided on this. Because they will, like, say they control, like, this is just such mafia tactics.
Referring to the United States as a corpse whose nails continue to grow. We can neither understand nor accept the Prime Minister identifying the United States as a top adversary of our ally, Hungary, or his assertion that the United States government is trying to overthrow the Hungarian government,
Well, is it?
literally to, quote, defeat him.
Okay, but, like, isn't this entire speech about overthrowing the Hungarian government? Like, isn't that this entire thing is him threatening them?
So some say we should watch what Hungary does, not what it says. But you see, that is now precisely the problem. I am not talking merely about what the government says, but what it does, its actions. The systematic takeover of independent media, where oligarchs purchased media outlets only to gift them to a government-controlled foundation.
Literally how the U.S. functions.
While the few outlets that remained independent faced investigations, tax audits, and the loss of advertising revenue.
I mean, that literally happened. Does anyone remember under Obama when they weaponized the IRS and used it to harass conservatives and conservative organizations to try to bankrupt them? Like, I don't even think that was a conspiracy. Like, that was an open, that just happened. Like, that happened. It's like now we're trying to like complain that Hungary has cancel culture.
These are not words, but actions. Ensuring all aspects of government power, from procurement to licensing to tourism subsidies to concessions to tax and audit actions to regulatory policy, provide favorable treatment for companies owned by party leaders or their families.
So he's saying that government shouldn't have control over regulations or taxes? Is that what he's saying? Like, okay.
In-laws or old friends, these are not words, but actions. The Defense of Sovereignty Act that threatens anyone involved in, quote, democratic debate or advocacy, in defense not of Hungary's sovereignty, but only of a single party's effort to monopolize public discourse. Even if not fully implemented, the law's mere existence serves its purpose, which is to frighten people into silence.
What about the Insurrection Act? What about like the way you arrested the January 6th people and are torturing them?
But actions. Equating independence with opposition. Independent media in Hungary gets labeled opposition media. Independent non-governmental organizations.
Well, you label it fake news.
Get labeled political partisans. Independent judges who voice opinions unfavorable to the government or meet with the American ambassador are labeled politicians funded and directed from abroad.
Didn't they just say that like literally the other day about the U.S. Supreme Court voting unanimously to not remove Trump from the ballot?
So rhetorical shell games that tell you to look anywhere other than where the actual ball is hidden was typical of Eastern Bloc countries during the Cold War. Russia continues that tragic tradition today. It's not something we expect from allies. No doubt you've noticed at this point that we do not ordinarily give speeches like this in other allied countries.
No, you do it constantly. That's the whole point. Like, once again, am I hallucinating? Like, did they behave this way during the Cold War? Did the U.S. even behave this way during, like, the 90s or the aughts? I feel like the level of arrogance and entitlement and just being a bitch has gone off the scale, like, particularly post-Trump. Like, it was pretty bad under Obama, but it's gotten way worse under Biden.
Because with other allied countries, what we have is dialogue. This government appears to have little interest in constructive dialogue to solve these problems. With other allies, we engage, we collaborate, we work together, even where we have differences. Here, that doesn't work until we act. And that is why the United States policy in Hungary is best understood.
What does "till we act" mean?
As a continuum of three elements. A continuous effort to engage by seeking dialogue. A commitment to speaking with candor about what we are seeing. And a readiness to act in response to choices the government is making. This will not change. We will continue to engage. We will continue to speak clearly. And we will continue to act in support of our interests in that order. If this government were to engage in meaningful dialogue, the rest would not be so necessary. And this is precisely what we have been doing. During the Trump administration, the United States warned Hungary about the dangers of hosting the Russian International Investment Bank in Budapest. We continued these warnings after Russia's renewed invasion of Ukraine. Unfortunately, the government decided not to wind down, but to double down. Not to close the Kremlin platform, but to increase Hungary's investment in it. After literally years of traditional ally-to-ally dialogue, we met the reality of Hungary's policy choice to deepen its relations with this opaque Russian entity.
They, like, to do business with another country that you're not at war with? Whoa, man. Whoa. It's like, it's almost as if they don't believe in capitalism.
Despite Putin's war on Ukraine, and we're left with no choice but to act. We did this not to punish Hungary.
Yeah, no, you
but
did.
to address a security issue multiple United States administrations had hoped to handle through dialogue with our ally.
And we just forced them, okay.
This past April, we sanctioned this Russian bank, extraordinary as it was to do so, to an entity within the European Union and hosted by a NATO ally. 24 hours after we sanctioned the bank, Hungary pulled out.
Yeah, but it was a disaster. Like the whole, like de-dollarization is happening because you guys made all these bad decisions. Like the alternative to SWIFT was is being set up. Like BRICS is going like on crack. You froze the 300 billion in Russian assets, which was everybody said was a bad idea. Literally, even neocons said it was a bad idea. Like The Economist said it was a bad idea. The Telegraph said it was a bad idea. Like it's leading to mass de-dollarization. Now, de-dollarization is going to take some time, but Hungary was 100% right. You abusing the international financial system against a country you're not at war with is a shit show.
Another example. Across multiple United States administrations, the United States has been engaging Hungary about security vulnerabilities associated with its expedited naturalization program's passport issuance. Despite extensive engagement in the Trump administration and the Biden administration, Hungary failed to fully address the United States' security concerns. So we were again left with no alternative but to act. The previous administration...
So, like, once again, he's just saying, just do what we tell you to do, or we're gonna, like, overthrow your government.
Instituted a requirement for all Hungarian passport holders born outside of Hungary to obtain a visa in order to travel to the United States. When that didn't prompt action, last June, we limited the validity of the visa waiver program ESTA approvals for Hungarian travelers. Now, this was a step that we never wanted to take.
But we did it anyways.
Both nations benefit tremendously from our people-to-people ties. We want more Hungarian travelers to the United States, not fewer. But we could not continue earnest dialogue that led nowhere, as a real security threat persisted. Only after...
Dialogue leading nowhere means they didn't immediately do what we told them to do. It is literally what it means.
After acting, did we begin to see progress in addressing this security?
You know what's funny? Like, I was arguing with someone the other day over China. This is so passive-aggressive, so G-slur. Like, aside from just the fact that the guy is gay, this is just so lame, so passive-aggressive, so insufferable. It kind of makes me like China. Because I don't think the Chinese would act like this. Like, would the Chinese foreign ministry act like this? Well, let's be real. Would a Russian ambassador act like this? Would anyone who's not an American ambassador act like this in another country? I can't think of anybody else who would pull something like this.
And now Hungary's allies are warning Hungary of the dangers of its close and expanding relationship with Russia. If this is Hungary's policy choice, and it has become increasingly clear that it is, with the foreign minister's 6th trip to Russia since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with his next trip to Russia scheduled in 2 weeks following his engagement with Russia's foreign minister earlier this month, and the prime minister's own meeting with Vladimir Putin in China, we will have to decide how best to protect our security interests, which as allies should be our collective security interests. These legitimate security concerns shared by Hungary's 31 allies.
So, like, okay, let's look at a map of Europe. So the expectation is that Hungary's going to have no relationship with Russia. Like, it's going to have none. Like, Hungary's there, Russia's there. Russia's the only real source of oil and gas in that area, in this part of the world. So the expectation is Hungary is not going to have any relationship with the largest, most powerful European country.
Cannot be ignored. Hungary is also alone on the defining issue of European security of the last quarter century, Russia's war in Ukraine.
No, they aren't.
as a friend and ally.
Slovakia also has the same opinion.
Hungary's concern about the war in Ukraine should make it a valuable voice in NATO discussions, guiding the alliance as it navigates these troubled waters. As a neighbor to this war, as a country with long historic ties.
Also, you guys blew up. So with the whole Nord Stream thing, I don't know if anybody noticed, but the UK, so Sweden, I think Denmark, Holland, and Germany ended their investigation into Nord Stream, and they couldn't figure out who was behind it. It was the mystery Scooby-Doo couldn't
As to
solve.
Ukraine, Hungary should be a leader in this discussion. Instead, NATO is working around Hungary, as it did when it convened the NATO-Ukraine Commission last year. 30 countries, now 31 countries, other countries won't be stopped. It is not just that we disagree about Russia's war in Ukraine. It is that Russia's war in Ukraine made it clear that we can no longer ignore long-standing disagreements that are undermining our relationship and our shared security. The war has not divided us, but it has revealed points of tension that have for too long been left unaddressed. Neither of us can afford to wait. So in the current moment, with the stakes so high, the United States is engaging Hungary with clarity.
Has it ever been described how if Russia wins in Ukraine, it's a threat to America? Could somebody please explain to me? Has that ever been explained? How that is an existential threat to the United States?
Candor, and when necessary, with action. Hungary says it wants peace, and that is why it is openly calling for the United States and other allies to cut off Ukraine from military support in order to force an immediate ceasefire and peace negotiation. The United States also wants peace. We want this war to end. But the Hungarian proposal does not stand up to reality.
Once again, this is what I like to call the natural disaster view of history, and I'm going to keep bringing it up. It's the idea that stuff just happens. There's no pretext, there's no history, there's no socioeconomic or cultural forces or political forces or anything. People are just evil. That's just the way it is. We aren't going to pay any attention to any of the concerns Orban has.
Does Hungary truly believe that if our partners and allies stop our military support for Ukraine as it fights on its own territory for its very survival, that Russia would then come to the negotiating table? Or would Russia do what it has done elsewhere and seize more of their land, pillage more of their property, deprive more of their people of freedom, kidnap more of their children?
Dude, you gave Israel a blank check. Israel has killed at least 3 times as many civilians as Russia has. Just keep that in mind. The amount of Russia's done some bad bombing. I'm not going to pretend they haven't. To my understanding, they have not tried nearly as hard to just mass kill civilians. I mean, the fact that 30,000 plus Palestinian civilians have been killed by Israel in a much, much shorter period of time.
The Hungarian policy is based on a fantasy that disarming Ukraine will stop Putin. History shows it would do the reverse.
So the origin of the natural disaster view of history is in grade school. My teacher was trying to shock us, so he gave us all these facts about the Congo and how poor it is and all the horrible things that are happening there. And I was just what caused this? And then he just I don't know. It's just bad. It's just bad. This is just what a lot of what the world is like. And so it just kind of happened. There's no lead up, there's no context, there's nothing. Actually, a really good example of this is the Rwandan genocide. So The Hutu-Tutsi distinction existed long before the Belgians came there. Now, did the Belgians use the local elites as a way of governing? Yes, but it's not as if it's something they made up. But like the way they view it is that like one day because Belgium's evil, they just created Hutu and Tutsi, and they did that. Also, none of the people had agency. They just decided to go ahead and kill each other. They just swung machetes, and it just happened.
It is not a proposal for peace, it is capitulation. This is not the approach of the Transatlantic Alliance, an alliance that stood firm in the face of the Soviet Empire and emerged intact and ascendant while the Soviet Union crumbled. This is a moment in history so significant that countries that long resisted joining NATO have jumped at the chance to join this powerful alliance and likewise secure their futures because they understand what it means.
I still think Finland joining NATO was really dumb. Like Sweden joining NATO makes sense to me. I don't understand why Finland did. Because Finland, I think, had a pretty good deal going. They had good relations with Russia. They had good relations with the U.S. They could trade with both sides. Like, this is how Turkey does it. Turkey plays both sides. They ask for a deal from the U.S., and then they go to Russia and say, beat this deal. And you can say what you will. Erdogan is a snake, but at least he's a competent snake. At least he winds up getting something for Turkey out of it.
They understand what Hungary 25 years ago well understood. Hungary could stand with Ukraine alongside all of its NATO allies.
Well, Constantine, like Finland also has basically had the guarantee of the Soviet Union and Russia. Neither side wanted Finland to be like, no one wanted a fight in Scandinavia. It would have been a shit show. Neutral Finland was good for everybody.
To demand real peace, true peace, which can only be based in freedom rather than standing beside Russia and calling for surrender and subjugation. At the same time, Hungarian officials diminish an actual invasion of a democratic country. Senior Hungarian officials conjure stories of interference in Hungary's own internal affairs.
Like, I think Sweden joining NATO does make sense, although, once again, I don't know why it's really necessary. Once again, Finland, I just don't get it. Because I think they're, like, fortifying the border with Russia now, and they've, like, stopped trade with Russia. And it's like, Finland, like, they're somehow going to replace their trade with Russia with Germany? The UK? Like, it doesn't make... It's so stupid.
Yet, they seem to have no qualms about flagrantly engaging in such interference themselves. Prime Minister Orban, who on one hand baselessly claims that the United States government is trying to overthrow his government.
I wonder why. Like, this whole thing has been calling for it.
Publicly calls for the political defeat of the President of the United States and actively participates in U.S. partisan political events.
And the U.S. would never do that. They wouldn't do that in Russia. They wouldn't do that in Hungary. They wouldn't do that in any of these countries.
Hungary advocates for electoral candidates around the world, from Poland to Brazil.
Oh, no.
All while decrying foreign interference here at home.
Because that's the same thing. Saying that you support somebody... saying that you support somebody and having an elaborate apparatus to undermine their country, fund opposition politicians, and control the media in that country are the same thing.
Who leads the United States government, or any government, is a question for the people of that country alone.
But it isn't, because you don't accept Putin running Russia.
To decide. My first boss at the State Department, Secretary Madeleine Albright.
Oh yeah, Madeleine Albright, the one who killed millions of Iraqis with the oil for food scandal. Remember that?
Was known for her blunt one-liners. She said that when she became Secretary of State, her political organs were removed. Her point was this: at the State Department, we don't do politics.
Well, what is this? You're calling for the overthrow of a foreign government.
We do policy, and for good reason. She would describe American foreign policy like an aircraft carrier. It may tilt in one direction or another depending on the administration in office, but it does not make quick turns between parties.
So so he's saying that the deep state controls American foreign policy. I mean, isn't that like basically what he said? Like, it doesn't matter who wins American elections, the deep state controls it. Like, people in the chat, am I exaggerating? Did I hallucinate that he just said that?
Like an aircraft carrier. It may tilt in one direction or another depending on the administration in office, but it does not make quick turns between parties. Just like we have enduring alliances based on core values, the United States has enduring interests that run deep and transcend party politics.
Literally the deep state. Literally describing the deep state.
Hungary's government,
I like how noses exposed this is.
would have heard that loud and clear from a recent bipartisan congressional delegation had they agreed to receive them, which is perhaps why they did not. While Hungary attempts to wait out those it disagrees with, whether in the United States or in the European Union.
I like how and I did a video about this, I think 2 weeks back, about how we're led by retards with ADHD who don't understand, like, that it's a long game, that you don't need instant gratification. I like how he's shitting on Hungary for taking a long-term look at this. It's like, yeah, well, Hungary is thinking maybe things will change in the future instead of just wanting it now.
The rest of the world is moving forward. While the Orban government may want to wait out the United States government, the United States will certainly not wait out the Orban administration. While Hungary waits, we will act. I have addressed where we have...
how is that not a call for regime change? Especially within the context. He said, Hungary wants to wait for regime change in America, but we will not wait for Hungary. It pretty clearly is a call for regime change.
In and where we are. And I have said before that I am an optimist, and this speech is an optimistic one.
No, it isn't.
I'd like to turn to a positive vision of where this relationship should be. In short, we want...
Oops. Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Second, we work to find a path prepared to commitment to dialogue. We're not. We admire states, no indication. We, the United States, there must be a political decision that values.
Sorry about that.
I have addressed where we have been and where we are. And I have said before that I am an optimist, and this speech is an optimistic one. I'd like to turn to a positive vision of where this relationship should be. In short, we want what polls consistently show the vast majority of Hungarians want: a close relationship between the United States and Hungary, rooted in democratic values and shared security and prosperity, exactly what the Prime Minister said he wanted 25 years ago. And that is what we still want today. The United States and Hungary will not agree on everything, and that's okay. We don't agree with any country on everything. But as allies, we should agree on the big things, the things that matter most, and on that basis, we can work through any differences on anything else. We should be...
Here's the other thing. Just think about this for a second. This is another thing to consider. I like how it's only Hungary. Do you notice that, like, Hungary has to be the one to budge? The U.S. can't make any concession. The U.S. can't even consider that it might be wrong. Hungary has to do everything.
Mutually concerned for the well-being of democratic values,
Oh, okay.
institutions, and of our relationship, regardless of who has the privilege of temporarily leading either of our governments. This last part of the speech is how we can do that and how we can get there. First, there must be a political decision that this is a relationship, Hungary's relationship with the United States, that Hungary's government wishes to improve. We have already made that decision. Unfortunately, we see no indication the government of Hungary has done the same. The United States cares about Hungary. We care about Hungarians.
Once again, like, what has Orban ever done that is anti-US? Like, basically what he's saying here is if you have an older brother who goes out and gets drunk, if you go out and you tell him, look, dude, you have to stop doing this, and you try to, like, tell him to go home and sleep it off, then that means you're the enemy. Like your brother or you're an older brother and your younger brother gets involved in, like, drugs or something like that, and you're like, dude, you got to stop. It's bad. It's bad. You're ruining your life. It's saying that person's a detractor and that person's your enemy because they're legitimately trying to tell you to not be a retard.
We admire and are in awe of your culture and your history, and we want a close relationship. We're not really asking for much. Transparency, dialogue, nonpartisanship, and a commitment to democracy would suffice. We are prepared to continue to engage.
Well, but the U.S. is like once again, also just on this on this topic, isn't there a political crisis in the U.S. because the Republicans won't pass the $65 billion over like the $65 billion over the Ukraine funding? Like, isn't the U.S. government completely shut down because of partisanship? Also, the Republicans wanted to audit this. They said, okay, like, once again, I'm just going to take a step back. Sorry if I keep pausing, but it's important to restate some of these things because Efslers like this guy try to gaslight you into, like, not thinking, like, just not that you live in some sort of alternate reality. So what the Republicans said is we will give the money to Ukraine, but you have to secure the border and there has to be an audit of where the Ukrainian money went. That to me seems pretty reasonable. Actually, the whole border thing was something Biden proposed. That wasn't even something that the Republicans came up with. And they said we can't audit any of the money. We can't say where any of it went. We didn't keep a record of any of it. We just gave the $100 billion out. Once again, if I have to fill out an expense claim, that shit, like, it requires so much duplicate paperwork. Even, like, for some things, I just don't bother. Like, if it's, like, under $50, I just buy it for myself because it's not worth the amount of time it takes to fill out the expense claim. But they had no receipts for any of the $100 billion. None. Plus, their government shut down because of partisanship. And they're trying to disqualify the...
Reach out, pragmatically work to find a path together.
No, you don't want that, though.
Second, we must take seriously concerns about security issues expressed by allies, not use them as leverage to secure unrelated parochial political objectives. Whether license plates for our troops or Kremlin platforms residing in Budapest.
The fucking license plates again. The 6 million license plates. That's the new scandal. Okay, so I'm gonna take a poll here. Okay, so press 1 if the worst event of the 21st century was January 6th. Press 2 if the worst event of the 21st century is soldiers in Hungary having to pay $3 a month for license plates. I don't know if it's quite as bad as the Holocaust, but it's up there.
For travel security vulnerabilities, we should respect concerns raised and work to resolve them. Third, we need to recognize that a relationship between states, as any relationship, changes and evolves over time. How we speak about each other matters. There is room to criticize. No government is perfect, including my own. The United States' great strength has been our readiness to confront our shortcomings and to debate them openly.
No, John, not real name. It's not the Hungarian soldiers. It's the American soldiers in Hungary have to pay money for license plates, and he's saying the fact that they don't, that this is like an indication of why they need regime change. Like, once again, I'm sorry if I keep asking this and people who watch the replay don't appreciate it, but I just want to make sure I'm not crazy. Chet, is he not literally calling for regime change because the Hungarians charge soldiers $3 a month for license plates? Like, is that a distortion of what is being said here?
While the Hungarian government's wild rhetoric in state-controlled media may incite passion or ignite an electoral base, the choice to issue on a daily basis dangerously unhinged anti-American messaging is a policy choice, and it risks changing Hungary's relationship with America.
I like how Israel committing literal genocide against the Palestinians doesn't change.
In light of these systemic challenges in our relationship, U.S. policy in Hungary will continue with the only approach that produces results: outreach, candor, and accountability. We will continue to reach out to the government of this country for pragmatic discussions about how to normalize this relationship, and urge that a political mandate be given for those discussions to produce results.
Basically, just do what we tell you to do.
We will also speak clearly about what is happening and what we are seeing. We will describe what we see in Hungary and in Hungary's relationship with its allies, and we will do so unflinchingly. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we will not wait. While Hungary may choose to wait out the United States will not do the same. The United States has not made a sacred pledge to shed American blood to defend French people or German people or Hungarian people.
Good.
Because we value these peoples or cultures or languages or religions or cuisines more than those of other countries not in the alliance. We make that pledge because we share a way of life as free people, able to choose our own government, not as nations.
Okay, that's very clearly a call for regime change. I mean, that's what the code is.
But as democracies.
So, like, because the implication here is that Hungary doesn't choose its own government. Because he said, like, the policies that the government of Hungary is unacceptable.
We commit to defend one another, not because of what divides us as different nations, but because of what unites us in the family of democracies. And because these commitments protect both of our countries and our peoples. The American service members at Papa Air Base could not find Szabolcs Szatmár Bereg on a map, and certainly could not pronounce it, any more than most Hungarians could identify Moline, Illinois, or Mena, Arkansas. But they have pledged their lives to this alliance of democracies. The United States values our alliance with Hungary and our long partnership with the Hungarian people. From Kovács and the U.S. Cavalry to Kossuth and the Gettysburg Address. From Cardinal Mindszenty and those who sought protection from authoritarianism to Katalin Karikó and those who ended an unthinkable pandemic.
Look, don't. Was he insulting my man Horthy there?
Our history interweaves us.
Our
alliance binds us. Our ideas about freedom and independence unite us. From Shelbyville to Szabolcs Szatmár Bereg.
So what percentage of anti-Americanism is just that people get pissed off when the U.S. acts like this? Like, I imagine a lot of it is this. Like, it just isn't. Like it's how can you like have this fucking guy come here and just shit on you and threaten you and be passive aggressive and gaslight you and not get pissed off? Like, can you imagine if someone came to your house and did this? Like, and this is why Russia's winning in the international sphere. This is why BRICS is winning. This is why China's winning. Because they don't act like this. Like, China and Russia, you can say what you will about them. But generally speaking, they will go and at least pretend to treat the other country as a sovereign nation that they could do business with. They don't act like this. They don't, like, go to... Russia doesn't go to the EU, the AU, to the UAE and give a speech like Putin doesn't go there and tell them to go fuck themselves like this. He doesn't go to India and tell Modi to go fuck himself, and that he's deeply concerned about the Indian political system. I don't think China does that either. Like, this is why no one wants to do business with you. Because if you do business with them, you get this. You get this asshole in your country calling for regime change, saying that your behavior is problematic, and you have to do 100% of what the U.S. wants them to do.
We needn't agree on everything, and we won't. We needn't even agree on most things. But there is clearly work to be done. We live in turbulent times. No one can doubt that, but it is in these difficult times when friendships and alliances are most seriously tested that they might also be most strongly forged. This is not a time for political games. It is a time for steadfast resolve. While a nautical metaphor may be a slightly awkward fit here in beautiful but landlocked Hungary, this is where your prime minister began 25 years ago, and so this is where I shall conclude today. Hungary's ship proudly anchored to the west 25 years ago, and it belongs there. But this government's actions and rhetoric make it sound like it does not feel so firmly anchored. The United States would not be acting as your ally if we did not forthrightly express concern about the course Hungary is charting through rough seas of its own choosing. We anchored together 25 years ago as democratic allies. It remains our...
You know what? And I will say this again. And the reason why people love Trump is because Trump doesn't treat the average person like they're dirt on his shoe. He doesn't treat them like they're these scum, that they're these inferior, just plebs who don't... well, I mean, Trump's a germaphobe, so he probably doesn't want them to touch him. But you get the point. He doesn't treat them like they're lesser humans. Like, he likes his McDonald's. He likes his burgers. He likes his Diet Coke. He says what he wants to say. People like that. People like it when somebody who's more powerful than them treats them with a little bit of dignity and respect. Like, that inspires loyalty. Like, your boss comes and like talks to you and gets to know you as a person and shows some like sympathy for you. Like, people love stuff like that. Like, Rob Ford won the election in Toronto because he literally just called everybody. Like, I think he literally called like half the city of Toronto. He just would go door to door. He'd talk to average people. He'd listen to their concerns. And he just was genuine with them. That's the kind of thing people like. Like, I get it. Like, a lot of these countries are shitholes. A lot of these countries are completely irrelevant. But that's no excuse for bad manners. That's, like, I get it that, like, Burkina Faso or Equatorial Guinea or any of these shitholes are, like, not nice places. They're not important. But there's no need to go there and, like, be a dick. Like, show a little humbleness. Show a little, like, just basic diplomacy. Like, it's... once again, which is more likely to get a good result? If you go and you act respectful and you try to What about Donald J. Trump calling countries assholes? No, I mean, like, I wasn't talking about other countries. I was talking about the American people. Um, no, Trump does shit like that all the time. At least when Trump does it, though, he says it to their face. He just tells them to go fuck themselves. I'll take that any day of the week over just this. Like, at least have the dignity of telling me to fuck off instead of doing this, like, passive aggressive soy boy thing. There's that scene in, let me see, Gran Torino. Gangsters. Okay. This is a scene that always sticks out to me.
Fuck you looking at, old man? Huh?
The hell are these spooks up to?
Spooks? You better get your ass on, Hunky, while I still let you.
That's right,
What you
bitch.
better do.
Fuck you think you is? Ever notice how you come across somebody once in a while that you shouldn't have fucked with? That's me.
Man, you fucking crazy, man. Get out of here, man.
Why don't you get your ass up out of here before I kick your old wrinkly white ass?
Motherfucker, man. What's wrong with him, man?
The fuck?
Motherfucker crazy.
This nigga.
The hell?
Get in the truck.
Crazy motherfucker, man. What's wrong with him, man? You put a finger at him.
Oh, shit.
Come on now. Hey, Pops. Come on now.
Shut your fucking face. Fucking don't listen, do you? Now get in the truck.
Get in the truck first.
Way to go, old man.
Shut up, pussy. What is all this bullshit anyway? Want to be super spade or something? These guys don't want to be your bro, and I don't blame them. Now get your old fade patty ass on down the road. Take care now.
Yeah, you too.
Oh yeah.
I love, yeah, it's the son. But the thing I love is that about that scene is it's literally just they respected him, like for not like talking down to them or shitting on them. It was just like they respected him, and like the white liberal who was pretending to be black, they just shit on. But they're like, you know what, this old man, he's hardcore. He's a king. He's an old king, but he's a king nonetheless. So I'll just leave it there. So like at least when Trump shits on one of those countries, he acts like that. He like treats them like an adult. Anyways, it's a fucking amazing. I love Gran Torino. As a friend of mine put it, it's racist Up. It's like a racist version of Up. So God bless everybody. Thank you for joining me for the stream. Have a great weekend.